Hey everybody, welcome back to Living Traditions Homestead. My name is Kevin. Sarah and the girls have come down with a bad chest cold. Seems like something that happens this time of year, almost every year, when the kids first go back to school and they bring home a bunch of crud that they get from the other kids. And it seems like every year either Sarah and I get it along with them. This year, knock on something, I'm still feeling pretty good. But my allergies are bad, but I have not gotten the cold that everybody else has so far. So today I'm going to make up a big batch of soup to try to help everybody feel a little bit better tonight. And we're going to do this just a little bit different than what most of you probably do. Instead of making chicken noodle soup today, we're going to make rabbit noodle soup. So we're going to start with some homemade bone broth that Sarah canned earlier in the year. We're going to use some good fresh organic veggies. And then we're going to use a rabbit from our herd that I butchered yesterday. We're going to get this all going so that by tonight we can make some homemade noodles and breadsticks and have a good warm dinner that will hopefully get everybody feeling a lot better. On top of that, I also broke out the colloidal silver generator and I'm getting a fresh batch of colloidal silver going. We're going to make quite a few gallons of it. That way we'll have it stored up and we'll be able to have colloidal silver for the winter. It always helps if you start taking it at the first sign of a cold. At least that's what we find, and that's how we use it mostly here on our homestead. So let's get busy. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to peel the carrots, dice up the carrots and the celery. We'll get everything in the crock pot and we're going to let the veggies and broth simmer for most of the afternoon. Now when I make soup, I like to leave the veggies fairly big so that they don't completely cook down to nothing in the soup. And also, Sarah doesn't really like cooked carrots, so I know she'll want to kind of eat around those. So if I leave them a little bit bigger, they'll still get a little bit of the flavor into the broth, but she'll be able to pick out the stuff she doesn't like. We'll do the same with the celery. We'll leave that in big enough pieces that there will still be some left in there by the time we get ready to eat it this evening. Alright, now that I have all of the veggies cut up, we're just going to get everything into the crock pot so again this can simmer for most of the afternoon. I forgot to mention that we're also going to be putting an onion in here. So we have carrots, celery, and onions, and then we're going to use the homemade bone broth. So we're going to just get this all into the crock pot and plugged in, and then we'll move on to starting to cook the rabbit. We'll take this over, we'll plug it in, we'll put it on high to let it cook for this afternoon. I'm also going to add some salt and pepper and some parsley, but that's about it. You know, when people aren't feeling well, you don't want to add a lot of different flavors into the mix. You want to kind of keep it kind of plain. So that's all we're going to do for now, and then we'll add the rabbit and noodles later on this evening. Alright, so moving on to the rabbit. The way that we're going to cook the rabbit is in our Instant Pot. This is my favorite way to cook rabbits now when I need to take the meat off the bone, because they just turn out so tender and they just fall apart and you can take the meat off easily. So if you're making any kind of a rabbit dish that uses shredded meat, this is definitely the best way to do it. If you don't have an Instant Pot, you can use a regular pressure cooker, but the Instant Pot is a super nice thing to have. So there's really no big trick as to how to do it. All we're going to do is add a cup of water. And you do want to make sure that you have the rack in the pot for the Instant Pot. So just 1 cup of water. And then we're just going to put the rabbit whole right down into the pot. and we'll take it over, we'll put it in the Instant Pot, and we'll just put it on the manual setting and let it run through one cycle. We'll just hit manual and it automatically goes to 25 minutes. So we'll let it run through that cycle. Once it's done, we'll just open the top, we'll let the meat cool down, and then we'll pick that all off the bone and add it into our soup. And then this evening we'll get busy making the homemade noodles and breadsticks to go along with it. So for now, we're just going to let this simmer. So the Instant Pot has beeped, letting me know that it's done. So we're just going to vent it, and then we will take the lid off and let the rabbit start to cool. Alright, now that all the pressure is out, we can go ahead and open the lid and let the rabbit cool down. Alright, the rabbit has cooled and I've taken it all off the bone. You can see this is how much rabbit meat I ended up with off that one rabbit. Not bad. I'm going to go ahead and just add this to the broth so it can all cook together while we make the noodles and the breadsticks. Alright, let's get started on the breadsticks. I'm not going to go over the recipe in a lot of detail because I already did a video on this. It's how to make homemade pizza crust. I'll leave a link to that up here. You guys can watch that video and it has the recipe and everything, shows you exactly how to do. So this is just my go-to recipe. I use this for pizza crust, I use it for breadsticks. Anytime we need something like that, this is the recipe that I use. So it's fast, it's really versatile, and we use it for a lot of things. Alright, the breadsticks are done. We'll just let those cool, but we won't cut them now. We'll wait until later. Now it's time to get busy working on the noodles. Alright, so it's time to make the noodles for the soup, and that is the last step in hopefully making a meal that will make the entire family feel better. So I have a very simple pasta recipe that I've been using for, I don't know, 10 years or more. It's only a couple ingredients. The first thing is flour. So we're going to use some organic all-purpose flour today. 1 1/4 cups. Then we're going to use 2 large eggs. We're using duck eggs because that's mainly what we have here on the homestead. But you can use any type of eggs that you have. And what I like to do is just make a little hole here in the middle of the flour. And we'll put the eggs right here in the middle. Perfect. So 2 eggs, and then just a pinch of salt. Then just take a fork and start to mix it all together. This is going to make a pretty heavy, dense dough, so it's not going to be light and fluffy like bread dough. Once it starts to all come together, then I like to stop using the fork and just use my hands. Okay, so I've got the dough all ready. Now I kept adding more flour until it ended up being a very dry dough. In this case, I think it's because the duck eggs that I had were really big. So you just kind of need to play around with it, but you don't want any stickiness at all, or it'll stick to your pasta maker as you run it through. So I'm going to cut this dough ball into like 6 pieces. And then we're going to use the pasta machine, but we're going to use the fettuccine cutter. So I think that will be a decent cutter for the dough here. So we're going to make this into 6 little balls here, and then we're going to run it through the machine. Alright, so we're going to run the dough through our pasta machine. Now for chicken noodle soup, or in this case rabbit noodle soup, I like to keep the noodles pretty thick. If you were making pasta for like spaghetti or something, you may go thinner, but in this case we're going to keep it pretty thick. So if you don't have one of these machines, you're going to start it on number 1. And I think in this case we're only going to go till number 3. So we're going to run it through first on number 1, which will flatten out the dough. And then we'll switch this to number 3 to flatten it out a little more. We'll leave it more like an egg noodle or a you know, just a thicker noodle here. So we're going to run it through like that. And we'll end up with a piece of dough that looks like that. And now we're going to run it through the fettuccine cutter, which will make a nice noodle for us. Alright, now we're going to run it through the fettuccine cutter. And that's what cuts it into nice separate noodles. So I'm going to do this for all 6 of the dough balls, and then we'll start the noodles boiling and we'll add them to the soup. Alright, so the noodles are all done. You can see them here on my board. I've just got them all separated. I've got a pot of water on the stove starting to boil. So what I'll do is I will boil these as you would any noodles, but keep in mind that fresh noodles don't take nearly as long to get done as dry noodles or noodles that you buy at the store. So we'll put these in the boiling water, we'll let them get done, and then we'll add them to the soup. Now the reason that you boil the noodles separately versus just boiling them in the soup is because they're going to soak up quite a bit of water when they cook. And you don't want it to soak up all the broth, or you'd end up with not a whole lot of soup when you're done. So boil them separately, then add them to your soup, let them sit for a few minutes before you eat so they get the flavor of the soup, and then they'll be perfect. So we're going to boil these up, add them to the soup, and then we'll be ready to eat.
You guys, I couldn't have asked for a better dinner for tonight. Thank you so much.
I'm glad that it turned out. I hope that this will be something that helps the whole family start to feel a little bit better, because, you know, when people are sick, it makes a big dent in how things get done around the homestead. So you guys, if this is your first time visiting our homestead, I hope that you'll hit that subscribe button before you leave. For those of you who are traditionalists who come back 5 days a week, thank you so much. Please keep everybody in your prayers. Hope that everybody starts to feel better. And until next time, thanks for stopping by the homestead. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.